Fundamental to our changing of our identity is recognizing the power of our self-talk, that we are constantly telling ourselves something. And what we tell ourselves is so critical, so critical. So when I don't recognize my self-talk, that begins to settle into my sense of being, who I am, because it's the dominant narrative in my mind. So here's the deal. Unless we are intimately encountering God talk, we're not going to change our self-talk. So I've got to begin to allow Jesus to speak into who I am. We talked about this last week, that our identity, the story we tell ourselves about ourselves, affects our attitude, and our attitude affects everything else. Think about it, when you've got a sour attitude, it makes your relationships get off kilter. It takes you off course from the person that you know is your best version of you. When that takes place, there's a self-talk that's driving that lack of alignment. So when you're not aligned with who God says you are and the best version of yourself, when that's not the dominant narrative of your mind, it's going to take you off course. So we've got to begin to arrest our messaging system so we can begin to align ourselves with the best version of us, which is our true identity. It's our God calling. It's knowing that I'm loved. So when I know what Jesus says to me, it changes me. When I meditate on what Jesus says to me, it changes me. It refocuses, redirects, re-inspires. So here's the deal. Whenever you tell yourself that you're loved, it's because Jesus has said that we're loved. We're reminding ourselves of the fundamental truth that we are loved by God. For God so loved the world, so God loved you. Jesus loves and adores you, wants to fill you with his presence, wants to walk in sync with you. But he's not the one that gets out of sync. We are. And so I have to adjust that. So I remind myself of what he's told me about that I'm loved. And it's my inspiration. You think about anybody that inspires you. When they inspire you, when someone that you love inspires you, you want to be like them. You're inspired. You want to move in that direction. God's love inspires us. And God told Jesus to go, and he went. And Jesus now tells us to go, and we should go out of the inspiration of being loved. Jesus tells us to be loving. He says in John chapter 14, says it 3 different times, but verse 15 says, if you love me, you'll obey what I command. And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another counselor to be with you forever. He's saying that when you have this love relationship, there's a response to it that is your new motivation. Because he loved me, I'm going to love. This new motivation, I'm going to step out and be loving. Not just receive love, but be someone that is a conduit of love. Whenever Jesus calls us to be disciples, that changes my narrative. I'm called to be his disciple. I let his voice change the voice in my head about my personal mission statement is now the mission statement of God, birthed in me, because where Jesus go, I'm following. So if he goes, I'm going to go. I'm his disciple. It's my preparation for being a missionary, preparation to go. And whenever he calls me to be a discipler, I'm preparing someone else to go. I'm bringing them along in this journey. And finally, when he asks me to be a missionary, it's the actualization of my identity. I begin to actualize, make real, begin to experience, live out the true purpose of my life. So all this week, we're talking about you and I learning to change our self-talk, learning to change the story we tell ourselves, the narrative in our heads. Because if I'm not hearing God talk, I can't change my self-talk. So how are you doing at altering your self-talk to be realigned with, in synchronization with, what God says about who you are? You are loved. You are a conduit and dispenser of love. Because he's loved you, you can love others. You are a disciple, a follower of Christ. You are a mentor, someone who gives away their faith, bringing another in preparation along the journey. And we actualize, we step into, we are on mission when we recognize that who we are people who go for God. I'll see you tomorrow.